kids. My name is Paige, and I am here to read you a wonderful story called The Adventures of David and Donald, the Flower. Oh, no, wait. What's it called? I'm trying to read it backwards. Is this coming in backwards to you? I think this might be coming in backwards to you. The Adventures of David and Donald, the Fractured Flower Pot. I have a feeling that there are many adventures of David and Donald, and this is just the adventure of the Fractured Flower Pot. And I'm very excited. I pre-read it, and I can tell you right now, it's really good. Okay, here we go. You ready? Ta-da! Ta-da! Ah, it's dedicated for mom and dad. Again, that's backwards. I don't know if you're old enough to read, but even if you were, that would be difficult. That says for mom and dad, which means the author is a good son. It means he calls home to his mother. And when all of you grow up, you call home to your mother. You understand me? That's the thing to do. Okay, here we go. Ta-da! David! This is David. David is in the 4th grade. He has a younger brother named Donald. David plays the trumpet. Ah, see, trumpet, trumpet. He enjoys sports. See, lots of sports. And he likes to ride his bike, play kickball and basketball, and go camping. He lives in a small town with his mother, father, and his brother. Like most 4th graders, he likes to play with his friends and have as much fun as possible. So that makes me think that David and me, we have a lot in common. David and I have a lot. I have a lot in common with David. David and I have a lot in common. We both like to have a lot of fun, and I bet you kids do too. Donald. This is Donald. Donald is in the 2nd grade. He has an older brother named David. That's right. Donald plays the trombone. He enjoys sports, but not as much as David. He also likes to go camping, play kickball and basketball, and ride his bike. He lives in a small town with his brother, father, and his brother. And like most younger brothers, he looks up to his older brother, David. Oh, and there they are together, side by side. David and Donald are the kind of brothers who spend a lot of time together. They are best buddies. They play together and generally get along very well. Together, they have lots of adventures and good times. However, there are times when they get into some trouble. I see a fractured flower pot in our future. Oh, there they are, riding in a car. David and Donald were on their way to their grandpa's house. Their family was going for a visit. Can you kids relate to being in the back seat, heading over to visit your grandparents? They're going to go see their grandpa. Grandpa's house was not too exciting for the boys. There wasn't much to do there. Mom and Dad would sit around and talk with Grandpa, and they would probably play cards, and that kind of stuff is enjoyable for grown-ups, but not for kids. While they were not too excited for the visit, they were excited about their school's field day that was just a few days away. Field day was one of their favorite days of the entire school year. There were always plenty of fun events. They figured while Mom and Dad visited with Grandpa, they could practice for field day in Grandpa's backyard. Sounds like a good plan to me. Here's a picture of what field day looks like. Medals and lots of track and field sports and different things to do. Field day was held in the spring every year at David and Donald's school. There were all kinds of fun games and events for all the students. It was one of the best activities of the year. The boys had a great time playing the games and competing against the other students. Their field day had games like dodgeball and kickball. It also included events like the 50-yard dash and the long jump. Okay. The family arrived at Grandpa's house and went inside. They went to the living room. Before they even sat down, David was asking, "Mom, can we go back outside and play?" Not yet, David. Let's sit and visit with Grandpa a while, said Mom. So there they are, sitting with Grandpa. Grandpa looks like a nice enough fellow, but just sitting so boring. You want to play, right? David and Donald tried to be good. They gave Grandpa a hug and said hello. They sat down. They even listened a little as their parents talked. But this didn't last long. This type of visit was just not any fun for them. This time, Donald asked, Dad, can we go out back and play? Not yet, Donald. Let's sit and visit with Grandpa a while, Dad replied. David and Donald tried to be patient. They sat down, they listened a little as their parents talked, and they tried to appear interested in the conversation. But again, this didn't last long. This type of visit, it just didn't have any enjoyment for them. And they kept asking Mom and Dad, can we go out back and play? Mom and Dad finally gave in and let them go. Go ahead, said Mom. Have fun, said Dad. See, that's their parents. Look like nice people. That'd be a good mom and dad to have, right? The boys ran through the kitchen and out to the backyard. While there were no toys for them to play with at Grandma's or at Grandpa's, where's Grandma? Let's not get into that now. Okay. The boys ran through the kitchen and out to the backyard. While there were no toys for them to play at Grandpa's, they were excited to get outside and prepare for field day. They're going to practice, practice, practice. Oh, there they are, running outside. Yahoo! Out the sliding glass door they go. Since they did not have a ball, they could not practice for kickball or dodgeball, so they decided to start with some sprints to prepare for the 50-yard dash. Grandpa's yard wasn't very big, but it was perfect for sprinting. Grandpa had a flower garden and a vegetable garden, and these areas were off limits to the boys. There were also many flowers in a variety of flower pots throughout the yard. They knew how much Grandpa loved to garden, and it was obvious that he took very good care with the flowers and plants in his yard. They set up start and finish lines at either end of the backyard and prepared to race. As the older of the two brothers, David got to start each race. Ready, set, go, David shouted. They ran toward the end of the yard. At first, David and Donald were stride for stride. The race was close, but David won, as usual. They went again, and David won, and again. Another win for David, and as the older brother, David, was used to winning, Donald soon grew tired of losing race after race. He decided it was time for a new event. Oh, it looks like we can do the long jump. Let's practice the long jump, said Donald. Yahoo! All right, said David, I'll set up the starting line. We will take turns measuring how far we jump. Let's see who can jump the farthest. You go first, David, said Donald. David lined his toes up at the starting line. Donald stood close by to mark how far David jumped. They were both hoping to earn ribbons in this event, so they focused intently on their practice. David pulled his arms back, swung them forward, and jumped with all his strength. Donald marked the distance, and then it was his turn. That's a good jump, David, said Donald, but I bet I can jump farther than that. Let's see. I'm going to wait to show you the picture. Donald darted over to the starting line. David stood by, ready to mark the distance. Donald was excited to take his turn. He felt that if he did his best, he could jump farther than his brother. As the younger brother, it was rare that he could beat David at anything. This, he felt, was a chance to show that he could beat David. He gathered himself. Here I go, shouted Donald. Donald pulled his arms back, then swung them forward and jumped with all his might. He lunged forward. As he landed, both of his feet slipped, sending him falling over into one of Grandpa's flower pots. As he got up, he and David could both see that the pot was broken into many pieces. The soil was all over the place, and the flower pot was on the ground. Wah, wah. Uh-oh. This was bad news for the boys. Grandpa was an avid gardener, and he loved working in his garden and tending to his flower pots. He was sure to be very angry that one of his flower pots was broken and the flower ruined. What were they going to do? Let's see. Oh no, Donald, said David. Look what you did. We are going to be in big trouble. You always get us in trouble. No, I don't, said Donald. You get me in trouble all the time. Yes, you do, shouted David. No, I don't, exclaimed Donald. Come on, said David. That might happen sometimes, but this one is all your fault. I was just standing here and you broke it, and we are both going to get it for this. Mom and Dad are going to be mad, and Grandpa will be furious. They will never let us play in the yard again. I know. Grandpa's never going to forgive us, Donald responded. David was worried. Donald, what are we going to do? Donald replied, I don't know. I don't want to tell Grandpa that we broke the flower pot. He's going to yell at us. Mom and Dad will be really angry too. They both sat on the ground for a few minutes. They were silent, deep in thought about how they were going to get out of this mess. Uh-oh. Pretty nervous, I think. Uh-oh. Then David remembered what he learned from his teacher, Mr. Geiger. I got it. Mr. Geiger taught us that when we have a problem, we should think about lots of possible solutions, and then we should consider the consequences of each of those solutions. Finally, we should pick the best one. He told us that if we follow this process, we should be able to find the best solution to any problem. Want to give that a try? David suggested. Okay, said Donald. Let's give it a try. Mr. Geiger seems to be a good teacher. I guess he knows what he's talking about. They both stood and thought about solutions for a few moments. Donald was the first to come up with an idea. Here's an idea. We can tell them that the pot was broken when we got out here. That way they won't be mad at us. Oh, that was my ring banging on the table. Sorry. As they're picturing Grandpa, they're picturing how angry he'll be depending on what solution they choose. They're imagining. That bubble means they're imagining what their grandpa will say, what their grandpa will think. Well, said David, I'm not sure about that. I think Grandpa will know we're lying. He's out here every day. Grandpa knows it wasn't broken before we got here. If he knows we're lying, he won't trust us and could be more upset with us. And Mom and Dad will know we lied about it too. They won't trust us anymore either, said Donald. I bet they won't let us go out and play when we come visit if they can't trust us, said David. We better come up with another idea. They thought about it some more. This time it was David who had an idea. I know, he said. We can tell Grandpa that his neighbor's dog, Ollie, got loose, came into the yard, and he broke it. Grandpa's neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Schellenberger, had a friendly Australian shepherd named Ollie. Ollie was a nice dog who often looked over the fence at the boys. He wagged his tail and jumped with happiness when he saw the boys. David and Donald enjoyed petting him over the fence. Well, Donald said, I'm not sure about that. If we blame Ollie, won't Grandpa be angry at him and his neighbors, the Schellenbergers? That's supposed to be Ollie. They're going to try to blame the little puppy. I'm not sure I can get on board with that idea. Let's see what the boys think. David replied, You're right, Donald. That could really cause some problems for Ollie. He could get in trouble with the Schellenbergers if they believe our story, and Grandpa could also get mad at the Schellenbergers too. The Schellenbergers and Ollie have always been kind to us. I don't think I want Grandpa to get upset with them and Ollie. We need a new idea. They thought about it some more. Donald came up with another idea. Hey, aren't there some other kids in the neighborhood? I mean, why don't we tell Grandpa that they threw a ball? It came over into the yard and knocked over the flower pot and broke it. Here, that was all the other kids in the neighborhood. Maybe they did it. David and Donald are going to say they did it. That's an idea that might work, David exclaimed. There are lots of kids in this neighborhood and they play all the time. I'm sure they have had balls come into his yard before. Grandpa will believe it. This could work. Wait a minute, Donald said. Sometimes we play with those kids when we come here. Mom and Dad won't let us play with them if they think they broke Grandpa's flower pot. I'm not sure we want to do that. I like playing with them. You're right, Donald, David said. We better not do that either. They paced back and forth. They thought and thought. What solution to their problem had consequences that would be okay? This was not easy. David said, I know what we have to do. We have to tell Grandpa the truth. It's the only solution that I can think of that has consequences that are okay for everyone. But everyone is going to be mad at us, said Donald. Well, Donald, continued David, that is true. But I think if we do it the right way, they might not be as mad at us as they would be if we'd made up all those stories and lied to them. You know, said Donald, my teacher, Mrs. Winning, taught us a way to apologize that she says is a good idea. We can always give it a try. So here is Mrs. Winning, and you can't read it because it's coming up backwards, but it says, tell the truth. And here are her 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to how to tell the truth. 1, you have to look the person in the eye and tell them what you're sorry for, Donald said. Mrs. Winning told us that it's important that you not only say sorry, but also tell them why you are sorry. She said, looking them right in the eyes helps show that you really mean it. That sounds like something Mr. Geiger would say, David said. We also have to tell Grandpa what we can do to try to fix the situation. That is important too. The boys spent some time practicing the apology in the yard. Look, they're in the yard together and they're practicing back and forth what they're going to say and how they're going to say it to make everything better. I think it could work. They decided on what they would do and how they would try to make it better. They rehearsed their words over and over again until they had a plan that they felt was just right. Then it was time. Ready, Donald? Asked David. Ready, David, replied Donald. Let's get this over with. They slowly opened the back door. They walked into the kitchen and back to the living room where Mom, Dad, and Grandpa were all sitting. What's going on, boys? Asked Grandpa. He could see from the look on their faces that there was something wrong. They walked slowly toward Grandpa. Soon they were standing directly in front of him. They paused. Go ahead, guys. Grandpa looked at them. It's a picture. Well, David started, we have something to tell you. Donald continued. We had a little accident in the backyard. These were not the exact words they rehearsed in the yard. They were nervous and having some trouble remembering exactly what they practiced to say. Grandpa inquired, oh, is that right? What kind of accident? Donald continued, well, we sort of broke a flower pot in your backyard. Even though they both practiced, this was not going how they rehearsed. Sort of, Mom interjected. Well, we did break a flower pot, David said. How did it happen? Said Dad. Donald got back on track with what he'd practiced in the backyard. Grandpa, we are very sorry. We were practicing the long jump in the backyard. We have field day coming up at school, and we both want to earn ribbons. David continued. We were jumping, and Donald slipped and fell into the flower pot. The pot broke, and we think the flower is ruined. It was an accident, and we are very sorry that we broke your flower pot. There they are, telling their parents and their grandpa. It's kind of scary, right? Whew, I'd be so scary to have to tell my parents and my grandpa. We know you love flowers, and we didn't mean to do it, said David. They were both looking Grandpa in the eye as they spoke. They remembered that this was an important part of an apology. I'm very sorry. We will replace the flower and the pot for you, Donald said. I'm sorry too, Grandpa. We never meant to break anything, and we will replace it for you, we promise, said David. Boys, you have to be more careful, Mom exclaimed. Said Grandpa. Let me go take a look. He got up and walked to the backyard. Dun, 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 dun. While he was there, Mom and Dad told the boys how disappointed they were in the boys that they had broken the flower pot. However, they were glad that Donald and David had told the truth about what happened, apologized, and offered to replace it. They said that although they thought the boys had made a mistake, they were doing the right thing by taking responsibility for what they had done. They were all a little anxious when Grandpa returned to the living room. Boys, Grandpa said, come here. The boys walked slowly toward Grandpa, expecting the worst. Ooh, we're in New York City. Can you hear that siren? Maybe you can hear it, maybe you can't. Big siren just went by. It was very loud in here. Sorry, let's get back to the story. I checked the backyard. I saw the broken pot and the flower, Grandpa continued. The pot is made of terracotta. It is broken and cannot be repaired. I am not happy that it is broken. However, I believe we can salvage the flower. We can? Asked the boys. Yes, we can. We can find another pot in the garage and plant the flower in that. I think with the right work, the flower will be okay. Would you like to do that? Asked Grandpa. We don't know how, said David. I've never planted a flower before, said Donald. Well, we will do it together. I will show you how to plant the flower, Grandpa said. You won't have to buy me a new pot, but you will have to work to be sure that the flower is planted correctly so it can survive. How does that sound? The boys were relieved and agreed to Grandpa's plan. They worked in the garage with Grandpa to carefully replant the flower, water it, and find a safe space for it in the yard. Then Grandpa, Mom, and Dad continued their visit and played some cards too. The boys decided it was best for them to stay in the house and watch television for the remainder of their visit. Soon it was time to go home. The family said their goodbyes and piled into the car. The boys sat in the back seat together, thinking about all that had went down during their visit. They were still excited about field day and the chance to win ribbons. Although they had gotten in some trouble, they both felt good about the way they handled the situation. It was nice to spend a little time with Grandpa planting the flower. It was rare that they got the chance to do that. They enjoyed learning a little bit about how to care for plants from their grandfather and showing that they were grown up enough to take, They enjoyed learning a little about how to care for plants from their grandfather and showing that they were grown up enough to be responsible for the mistakes they made. While it wasn't easy, they were glad they told the truth and apologized. They were proud of that. And now they're just remembering back. That says right here in the think bubble, it says, I'm sorry, Grandpa, because that's what they said. And they're remembering that they planted the beautiful flower and that their grandpa took it okay. He's not frowning or angry. He's happy. And that's it. That's the end. So that's wonderful. So if you ever have a problem like that, maybe you kids can think about something that you've done Not that any of you have ever gotten in trouble. I'm sure every single one of you is a perfect angel and has never done anything wrong. Ha ha ha. I know I used to get in trouble as a kid a lot. And sometimes I would try to lie about it. And it always got me in way more trouble when I tried to cover it up. So I think not just as a kid, but even when you grow up, I mean, these are the sort of things that adults have to deal with too, not just little kids. When you've done something wrong, just say that it was wrong and explain why. Sometimes it isn't an excuse, but it's sometimes an explanation can make a big difference. And I'll bet you that if you're really honest and you're really truthful and it really comes from your heart, almost every time that should work. Most mom and dads will understand, and grandpas and grandmas will understand that kind of thing. So, and you can always go to your teacher. You know, teachers can be really helpful too. If you're not really quite sure how to handle a situation, you can always ask your teacher or ask another friend or another, another adult friend, like an uncle or an aunt or a babysitter or something like that. You can always check with somebody else. I'm sure people will give you guidance. So I hope that you're enjoying your school year. I know this is, wow, has this been a crazy, crazy year? And I don't know if you are going to school via Zoom and like remotely on your computers or your laptops, or if you're actually spending some of your time in classroom with your friends and fellow students. But either way, I hope that you're learning and I hope that you're happy and I hope that you're thriving. And I'm sending you all my love and all my best wishes for the absolute best school year you can possibly have. All my love. Bye. Mwah.